Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Anthony Hatch and you have found the Adopting Autism channel, and this is a brand new series that we're starting all about adoption, foster care, and everything in between. Today we are going to be answering 5 questions about adoption that I get quite a bit, and how it will affect your family and what to look for in adoption and what the process really looks like. A lot of people, for the most part, with adoption, the biggest step is getting started. And so we're going to be talking from my experience. I won't be answering a lot of questions about surrogacy or any of that because we personally have not experienced that firsthand. And so I always want to be giving out information that's based on our experience. So a little bit about me. My name is Anthony Hatch. My husband's name is David. He is actually at work right now, so he was unable to film this part of the video with me. But he obviously was part of the process too. And we have adopted 2 little boys from Massachusetts DCF foster care. And we had fostered to adopt them, and we have finalized with them, and so now we are able to show them on the channel and social media and all that fun stuff. But we also love to bring awareness to foster care and adoption, especially when it comes to special needs kids, because both of our kids are special needs. They both have diagnosed moderate to severe autism, and they both have other medical conditions that categorize them in the higher special needs category. And that's the choice that we made to bring them in, and I don't regret it for a moment. But there's a lot of considerations to take in when considering adoption. So we're going to answer the top 5 questions that I get most often about adoption, and then we're going to go from there. We are going to be putting up a video every Tuesday about adoption and foster care. It will pretty much be a sit-down video. Maybe we'll have some guests later on, but this is the very first video in the series, and you're seeing this on a Tuesday. I want to say, I don't know what day it is actually. It's gonna go up on a Tuesday. I don't know the date, but it's gonna be going up on a Tuesday. So we will be talking about foster care and adoption every Tuesday on this channel. So before we dive into the questions, let's talk a little bit of history with us and where we're coming from when we provide our information. To start off with, I'm adopted. My parents adopted me when I was 2 years old from the Philippines through an international program. That is not the route we went, but that is the route my parents went. And you know, one day when my parents are down visiting, I will have them come sit down and we'll talk about that process for them because it was very different from what we went through. And so that's partially why we wanted to do adoption. Me and David both knew that we were going to have kids at some point, but we didn't know. Obviously, being 2 guys, we couldn't conceive naturally. So we looked into a bunch of different routes. We looked into surrogacy, we looked into private adoption, and ultimately we landed on foster care to adopt. Why we did that is because we knew that we wanted to give love to a child, and we knew that there were some other limiting factors in the other sectors of how to adopt a child. So we ultimately ended up going with foster care. So back in 2018, we decided to apply to the Foster to Adopt program through DCF. We were accepted, we did the classes, and about 2 years later, we finalized with our first son, Gage, in August 9th, 2 years later, we finalized with Gage, and then about a year later, we finalized with our second child, Jay, on July 6th. So there's a lot of information in between there, but we're just going to go over, this is like a general 101 question about adoption. So the first question that I get most often is essentially, what does the adoption process look like? So, you know, this is a very long-winded answer. Essentially what the process looks like is that you have to decide what type of adoption you want to go through, either private or foster to adopt. You know, private, you work with an agency, you pay very large amounts of fees to the agency because you will be working to get a newborn essentially. A mom who has decided to put her child up for adoption will go to an agency, and they will coordinate all of that with you. You'll be responsible for medical expenses in most cases. You'll be responsible for lawyer fees and any other expenses that come up during the pregnancy, you'll be responsible for. And depending on the state you're in, we are in Massachusetts, there could be a waiting period after the child is born. The parents, some states have up to 72 hours after the child is born to decide whether or not they actually want to sign away the parental rights and let you adopt a child. We went through the foster route child, the foster system in DCF, and so we ended up having to apply, take classes, do a home study. We didn't specify age, sex, gender, race, or any of that. We did specify some disability ranges just because of the living situation that we're in, and what we thought we could handle. After that, we waited and we did the search. Both of our kids came through. Our first child came through a semi-conventional route. He was actually the foster child of one of my coworkers that was unable to adopt and wanted to find him a loving home. And so we actually found him in the foster care system. It's a lot about networking. And so he came to us that way. And the other one, crazy as it sounds, we actually found Jay on a website. He was actually up on the Mare website. It's a public website. You can go onto it, MARE. It's a Massachusetts Mare website. You can go on it, see the kids that are available. And one night, just very randomly, I was scrolling through and I saw Jay on there, and I fell in love. And here we are, almost a year and a half later, and he has been in our home, and we wouldn't change it for the world. The second most often asked question that we get is, what is the hardest part about it? So for us personally, the hardest part is possibly knowing that the child could go home. We did specify that we wanted something called a legally free child, meaning that the parents had terminated their legal rights to the child. However, that does not stop any family search. So DCF's main goal in any situation is reunification. When you take the classes, they are very clear about that, is that they would like to see the child go home to their biological family. And that is just something you know. Both of our kids were legally free when we started the process, so that did lower the likelihood that they would go back to a biological family, but that did not eliminate it altogether. There is a waiting period once the child comes into your home of 6 months before you can actually file or petition for the official adoption. And up until those 6 months, really up until the point where the judge says, he's yours, case is closed, and they sign the paperwork, any family member can come forward and claim rights to the child and possibly petition to be the guardian. Had that happened in either one of our cases, the child would have gone home to the biological family, and he would have lived out his life there, presuming that nothing had gone wrong. So that emotionally is really the hardest part, is possibly knowing that the child could go home to the biological family. But knowing that deep down inside, if that was what was going to happen, that possibly is the best thing for the child at the time. The third most asked question that we get is, how long does it take? It can take, so for our first child, it took 2 years. There was a bunch of hurdles that happened in the beginning of the adoption that we had to jump through. There were some snags in the beginning of the adoption. So our first child, from the time we applied to the time we finalized, was just about a year and a half to a year and a quarter of time. We started in 2018. In the beginning of 2018, we finalized in August of 2019. So just under a year and 3 quarters to finalization. Our second child, it went fast. It was, because we already had all the paperwork done and the home study and everything that takes about 6 to 8 months to get done before you even start to search for a child, was already done. They used it from our previous adoption. It was 8 months. Literally 8 months from the time we got him to our house. We found out on a Thursday that he was going to be coming to our house on a Monday. he moved in, we waited the 6 months, we petitioned, and we got a court date fairly quickly. So that was about 8 months. So depending on the situation that you're in and what legal hurdles you have to get through, it can take a long time. And you just have to know that. In other cases, you know, everything's done. The family search is done. You just have to wait that 6 months for the petition. There's subsidy that you could possibly wait for, and then you have to wait for a court date. All of these things we will touch in later videos. I know I'm throwing out a lot of lingo. It's just that I've been in the DCF system for so long now. I kind of just use them interchangeably without really thinking about it. But that is just something we'll cover in a later video. Now, the fourth most asked question we get is, were you able to, quote-unquote, choose your child? Yes and no. So the answer to this was, yes, we did get to choose our child. No, we did not get to our specific child in the first case. So when you go through, after you're done with your training, you start doing something called a home study or a case study, where you literally are writing an autobiography about yourself, and you're answering questions in that. And you're saying, hey, do you have a particular race you want in mind? Do you want a particular sex, age, disability range, anything, you know, geographical location, like within the state of Massachusetts? All of those questions are answered later on. Don't go to the first day, like the first training, and be like, this is what I want. I want this, this, and this. These are hard conversations that you have to have with you and your spouse if you're adopting with another person. There were single moms and dads that were in our class that adopted, so good for you guys. So these are questions that we will talk about later in the series, but these are questions that you have to ask yourself, like, am I equipped to deal with a child with disability? Do I want a teenager? You know, there is nothing wrong with deciding that, hey, I don't want a teenager. You are deciding for yourself. Ultimately, this person, this living thing, this living being is going to be coming into your home, and you have to have the ability to love it. And if you want, and don't settle. Like, if you want a newborn, get a newborn. Just know that it's going to take a lot longer to get a newborn, because everybody wants a newborn. You know, if you want a teenager, that's awesome too. Like that is amazing. Like, teenagers are really hard to get placed in foster care. However, they can come with a lot of baggage, like you know, emotional baggage, trauma, also all stuff we'll talk about in later videos. But whatever you want, you need to be honest with yourself. There is no wrong answer in deciding what you want for your family. We ultimately decided that we did not care about gender, race. We did have limitations on disabilities. Like, we couldn't take a child in a wheelchair. Our house is just not big enough for it. It's just an honest communication with your spouse and what you think you can handle physically and emotionally. A lot of these kids come with a lot of baggage. Not all of them, but a lot of them do, and you have to be able to deal with that emotionally. And the fifth most requested question that we get is it expensive to adopt? So, personally, through DCF, it is not expensive. We honestly did, through private adoption, can cost up to $20, $30, $40, we even quoted $50,000. And that's if you have a single baby. If they happen to have a twin, the legal fees could go up, and things could skyrocket from there. However, with DCF, there is no fees. You are essentially working as a state worker until you adopt this child. You actually will receive a subsidy for a child depending on the kid's age, disability, if there's special needs, if there's other things. So you will actually, depending on what state you live in, at least in Massachusetts, we received a subsidy. We actually didn't have to pay anything. However, with that, it's not that much. Don't go into this ever for the money. Never. Because it is not that much. It barely covers the kid's food for a day. Let's say it's not that much. Also, if this route sounds good to you, keep in mind that people are going to be coming in and out of your home all the time. We regularly had DCF workers coming to the house to check on the kid. You know, early interventions were coming to the house. So be prepared. That's another thing that you have to keep in mind when you're doing foster care to adopt, is that there will be people coming in and out of your home to ensure that child's safety the entire time. At least in our case, we always had people coming to our house for their monthly visit, early interventions, you will be taking the child to a lot of doctor's appointments that are mandated by the state. So, is it expensive to adopt through DCF? No. Do private care? Yes. So, it really depends on the route that you go on, the answer to that question. So I know these are this is literally just a tip of the iceberg, but I wanted to get this series going with the top 5 most requested, top 5 most asked questions about foster care and adoption. And I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you guys are new here, I would really love it if you guys would, I think I'm pointing to the right place, like and subscribe. Give this video a subscribe and a like down below. Leave a comment. Are you looking to foster to adopt? Are you currently fostering to adopt? Let us know what you think. We would love to hear from you guys. Look forward to a new foster video and adoption video every Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next Tuesday.